Hello, fellow nerds. I constantly say this because it's something I believe to be true, but I find the best experiences of watching something are when you block out all the noise and have no idea what you're getting into. Your openness to it isn't tainted by trailers, commentary, likes to dislike ratio, etc. For me, The Girl with All the Gifts was a gem of a find. I came across it years ago and it just kind of stuck with me. There are some movies that no matter when they were made are really poignant at any given time. They just speak to something you're either already thinking about or giving you a perspective on a specific thought you didn't really have any way of articulating. The Girl with All the Gifts is a film that came out in 2016 and was based off of a book written several years before that. I can't read, so I'm left with only watching the film and allowing it to either stand or flop on its own. I've seen this film compared to The Last of Us, and although I do agree that there are some similarities, I think the stories explore different things. The Last of Us explores the bond between Joel and Ellie and the revenge redemption arc of a post-apocalyptic infected world, whereas The Girl with All the Gifts explores the nature of what it means to be human in a similar scenario through the eyes of Melanie. And by the way, spoilers are mandatory on this channel, so, there's your warning. We start with darkness and hear a child whisper counting up to 30. We don't know what she's counting, but the first thing we see is that she has two pictures on her wall. One is of a kitten and one is of a forest. She's in what appears to be in some kind of jail cell, and when she hears banging in the background, she jumps up, puts on her hoodie, pulls out a wheelchair, and sits in it. She matches up all of her limbs to the chair straps perfectly to make sure that she is ready for what she knows is about to happen. This little girl is no more than 10 or maybe even 11 years old. The door bolts unlock and two armed military guards come in, pointing their weapons at her, and she says, "Good morning, Private Gallagher. Good morning, Private Devani." It's such a contrast that the sweet, innocent girl doesn't seem upset by the guards entering in such a way, but rather is genuinely pleased to see them. They don't respond to her at all, and as Private Gallagher finishes securing all of her restraints, she reminds him word for word of the rule he's forgotten: cuffs and straps to be verified manually and by line of sight. After securing her properly, they wheel her out of the cell and we get a first glimpse of the facility she's living in. It's clearly a military base, and it could be assumed that they're in an underground bunker with armed soldiers all throughout. You hear soldiers calling out to the others in cells, transport friggin' I can't say that word because that's not a YouTube safe word, so you can use your imaginations. She's wheeled into a classroom with a group of other children in the same state, separated COVID style several feet apart and all strapped in wearing their uniforms of orange, sweats, and Crocs. There's a soldier in front of the classroom who tells them that they are going to identify elements on the periodic table, and Melanie, well, she knows all of them. Some of the other kids kind of do too, but Melanie will raise her hand to be called on, and the soldier is not impressed. In walks the real teacher for the class, Miss Justineau, and all of the kids welcome her with a "Good morning, Miss Justineau." She tells the soldier that the kids aren't up to the periodic table yet, and the soldier responds with essentially a "does it matter?" After the soldier leaves, the kids beg Miss Justineau to tell them a story, but she's hesitant that one of them will snitch and she'll be essentially put into solitary. Now, it's easy to forget these kids are strapped into wheelchairs in this scene because at the end of the day, it all seems just so normal. Kids in class trying to not do real work. This film does a very good job of blurring the lines throughout. We know that something's up, we just don't know what. Clearly these kids are dangerous, but how dangerous could they be for this whole environment to be so heavily fortified? Nearly everything that happens in this film is through the eyes of Melanie, who's not only really clever, but observant. She manages to convince Miss Justineau to tell them an ancient Greek myth that could count as a history lesson, and Miss Justineau tells them the story of Pandora and her box. Later that day, Melanie is back in her cell and we see she's given some food through the door, but when we look into the bowl, there are live maggots in there that she eats. In the middle of eating them, becomes a bit euphoric and falls asleep. Then there's someone walking down the halls with a clipboard and she greets Melanie with a "Hello, Melanie." Caldwell does this unlike any soldiers, but also without any emotion, unlike Miss Justineau. Melanie responds in that polite way she does, "Hello, Dr. Caldwell." She asks Melanie if she was able to figure out the riddle she'd previously given her about someone stealing something in a box, and whether or not it was stolen before closing the box. Melanie easily answers the riddle, and then Caldwell gives her another riddle. There is a cat in a box where there is a 50-50 chance of it being alive or dead. Which is it? Melanie tries to guess by asking follow-up questions, and she admits she needs more time to think about it. She then asks Melanie to give her a number between 1 and 20, and Melanie gives her 13. Caldwell then writes on her clipboard, subject's responses, exquisite mimicry of observed behaviors, ? Melanie asks her about what that means, and she doesn't really explain, but it basically just means that she's able to learn how to converse and absorb new information easily. You can tell Melanie is a bit hurt by this because, well, why shouldn't she be? The next day, Melanie is headed to class and notices cell number 13 isn't open. She asks the guards if Kenny is feeling alright, but of course they don't respond. In class, Melanie asks Miss Justino if Kenny was coming to class, and she replies with a no. She then asks if he's ever coming back, and she gets no response. Miss Justino tells the children she's going to release their writing arms so that they can write stories of their own, and Melanie writes a story about a beautiful woman who she saved from a monster, and the story is so sweet in its innocence that Miss Justino starts to cry. Melanie immediately apologizes, not really knowing what she did wrong, and Miss Justino comforts her by putting her hand on the top of Melanie's head. Melanie gets caught up in the gesture, and really it's just a moment where we learn that these kids have never even had human contact. Sergeant Parks bursts in yelling at Miss Justino because what she just did was so dangerous. He then gives her an example of this by spitting on his arm and putting his hand in front of one of the other children's faces. The little boy was no longer the cute little boy when you see his jaw crack and he tries to eat Parks' hand. Some of the other children picked up the scent as well with the same reaction, and then Parks pulls out a tube of some kind of blocker, e-blocker or something like that on his hand that masks his scent. The children are taken back to their cells, and Melanie tells Parks that she, meaning Miss Justino, likes her more than she likes him. He then leaves her in her chair strapped in and locks the door behind him. Miss Justino, in true horror movie fashion, heads down to the cells to check on Melanie. When she sees her still locked in her chair, she unlocks the door, runs in to unstrap Melanie. As she's doing so, Melanie can smell her scent and quickly says, "You smell nice, Miss Justino." Before Miss Justino can finish unbinding her, Melanie yells for her to get out now. She manages to make it outside of the door and locks it behind her before Melanie can get to it. Miss Justino is the only person in the facility who hasn't lost her empathy. I think this is why Melanie loves her so much. She knows there's something wrong with her, and even though Miss Justino is afraid, she still shows all of the children vast amounts of empathy. Miss Justino knows full well that these children can still ask questions, have full conversations, and are still very much able to think logically and rationally. Melanie is exceptional at this, which adds to Miss Justino's guilt about the environment that they are in. Even though they can't control their own natural instincts, they are still children. Dr. Caldwell is making her rounds again when she finds a tube of skin blocker in front of Melanie's door. She asks Melanie about it, but Melanie denies she's had a visitor. Caldwell knows better. She sees that Melanie is clearly disturbed, but instead of asking her if she's okay, she asks if she has the answer to the riddle of the cat in the box, and Melanie responds with, "The cat was never in the box because the cat was clever enough to run away." Caldwell finds this response odd and starts to ask for a number, but before she could finish the question, Melanie blurts out 4. This was also odd, as the doctor notes that Melanie's cell number is also 4. See, I'm pretty sure when she asked Melanie for numbers between 1 and 20, she's using Melanie as a lobotomy lottery, right? When she picked 13, that was Kenny's number, and he disappeared the next day, after she gave Caldwell that number. Her now giving the number 4 lets Caldwell know that she is choosing herself, and she should be the next on the list. Incidentally, the number of the classroom door is 4, and I'm not sure if there's any relevance, but I thought I'd point that out as well. The next morning, Melanie gets ready for transport to class as usual, but this time, Parks takes her to a different part of the facility, and Melanie asks a million questions, but Park doesn't answer any of them. As they make their way across the yard, we see soldiers running around shooting at a gate that has loads of infected adults about to make it through the barrier. He tells them to use a flamethrower, but isn't deterred from his mission of delivering Melanie to her new location. He brings her into an operating room where we find Caldwell and another doctor. The same from the first time we see her in the classroom with the periodic table. They are in scrubs preparing for a procedure. They give Melanie something to sedate her and then move her from the wheelchair and strap her onto the table. Before she passes out, Melanie sees a brain in a jar that looks really unhealthy. It's really dark with these fibers floating above it. The jar is labeled 13. It's Kenny's brain. Miss Justino bursts into the room saying that she didn't sign up for this and that what they are doing is wrong. Caldwell maces Miss Justino and orders the other doctor to go and get security, which escort Miss Justino out to put her in lockup. Melanie is not fully sedated. She sees all of this and yells for Miss Justino, but Caldwell insists on continuing. She tells Melanie that she didn't understand the riddle because she doesn't understand what she is. The cat in the box is both alive and dead. She is the cat in the box. The sound of the klaxon blasts through, and Caldwell instructs the the other doctor to close the gates, and we get an eerie scene with the infected overrunning the facility. The second doc, of course, turns her back on the window so doesn't see what's coming towards her, but she is attacked and bitten, and Caldwell kills off the infected who've broken through the window and are caught in the gate. Not only that, we see the doc immediately starting to turn into one of them. Caldwell has been cut in the process but not infected and escapes through the back door, leaving Melanie strapped to the table with Dr. Infected. In this scene, we are informed of a couple of things. First of all, it takes almost no time for someone to turn once they've been bitten. And two, the infected don't attack their own. Because the infected don't attack their own, Melanie is infected but presents as human. She's different. The children in this facility are infected, and Caldwell has been studying them, hoping to find a cure to save humanity. None of the children she has operated on have survived and have not led to any real breakthroughs, but she seems to think that Melanie is the golden ticket. Melanie is smarter than the rest. She's closer to being human than any of the other children, and that fact leads Caldwell to believe that she is the right one. Melanie manages to cut the straps binding her to the table and escapes. She runs outside and we see the chaos she's in the middle of. The infected have broken through and are attacking all of the soldiers. She spots Miss Justino still being transported by the soldiers, and when the teacher tries to escape them, Devani hits her on the face with the back of her weapon, causing her to lose consciousness. Melanie sees this and attacks both Devani and her partner, saving Miss Justino from certain destruction in this chaos. Because Melanie has now fed, she gets into that euphoric state, and when Miss Justino sees her, goes to pick her up and tries to find a way out. But Melanie is still protecting her, even though she's passed out, because her infected scent is masking Miss Justino's scent. As a side note, this was something I first saw in The Walking Dead when the survivors would have to walk through the herds of the infected. They would cover themselves in organs, slime, and goo to mask the fact that they're alive. It's terrifying because one slip and that's it, you're done. You're just now food. Parks and other soldiers are in armored trucks trying to pick up living staff to get them to safety, and Miss Justino carries Melanie to it and jumps in for safety. In the truck is Parks, Caldwell, Gallagher, Dylan, Justino, and Melanie. They make it out to the woods to stock up on some water, and because Melanie is dangerous, Parks puts a mask on her, some handcuffs, and straps her to the top of the truck. This begins the journey of trying to get to Beacon, another base, but have to traverse small and large pockets of infected. They are attacked along the way and end up losing Dylan to an attack and have to make the rest of the trip on foot. Heading towards London, they find a mall littered with infected who are milling around and just looking like they're sleeping while standing. They have to make it through to rest up and reassess their next moves, and Parks gives them very specific instructions. Don't make a noise, don't make eye contact, and use only soft rounds. Melanie asks him why soft, and he explains to her that they make less noise and less spatter to keep the spread of infection low. She thanks him for explaining to her the how and why, and it is the first time he's spoken to her like a person and not a thing. I think he's starting to warm up to this adorable child. As they head in through the herd, there's this squeaking noise coming towards them. It is an infected mother pushing a stroller and navigating through the herd with something moving inside of it. Caldwell's curiosity causes her to stop the lady's forward motion and look into the stroller. Why would she do that? For science. She's never seen them show maternal instincts before. The mother, of course, wakes up very bitey and unhappy, which means they need to get the hell out. They make their way into a hospital facility and are able to camp out for the night. Miss Justino has tried to find Melanie food, but says she will try again in the morning. She's also brought Melanie some fresh clothes to wear tomorrow, and she's thrilled by this. She's never had a pair of sneakers and is just amazed by the Velcro, while the others are making sure there are not random infected locked in there. Melanie is left with Caldwell, and she starts to ask Caldwell questions. Melanie wants to know who she is and where she's from. Caldwell tells her that back in the day and in the early times of the pandemic, Parks would take his team out to do recon and look for supplies and things. On one trip, they found themselves in a maternity hospital where they found the children, including Melanie. The expecting mothers had been cored from the inside out. She thinks there was a single event that infected all the mothers, and the embryos were also infected, eating their way out. Parks and his team collected the infants and brought them to the base, and this is where all the children came from. Caldwell had been studying them since birth, looking to make a cure from them. Melanie is not happy about this at all, even though she listens closely. The fungus that infected the population have a symbiotic relationship with their hosts. In trying to survive, the fungus adapts, and this is why the kids are different. They can absorb information, learn, and adapt. What makes Melanie so special is that she can do it better than any of them. She's truly clever. Caldwell insists, though, that it is not her human side but her fungal side which is responsible for her being able to adapt so well. By the time they are ready to head out the next morning, the path out is covered by infected. Melanie offers to head out to find something to distract them for safe passage, but Caldwell is against it. She clearly wants to preserve Melanie so that she can use her for the cure, but everyone else is like, nah, we just need to survive at the moment. Priorities. Caldwell thinks she's gonna run off, but Melanie assures her that she has a reason to come back, Justino and Kieran. Kieran is Gallagher, and that she doesn't tell lies. She finally is allowed to head out, and we see her first experience of being outside of the facility. As we travel through town with Melanie, the first thing she spots is a cat, and as hunger takes over, she chases after dinner. Even though we look at houses and household items as just very everyday things, she sees them as novel ideas. She's never seen any of this before and is just completely amused by all of it. She enters a house and finds a small dog that managed to survive the planet shutdown and takes him back to the group as bait for the Hungries. Poor Rufus, that's a messed up way to go, but she doesn't have any sympathy for this cat. She's matter of fact in the way she does this. Put a pin in that for later. Once the group reconnects, Parks puts the mask and cuffs back on Melanie and tells her, good job. This little girl is so proud and is finally starting to feel more accepted, cuffs and mask notwithstanding. Parks has never had a kind word for her, and this is huge. As the group makes their way through town, they head to a rooftop where they can get a better lay of the land. Parks suggests Melanie use Kieran's walkie to find safe routes for them to head down and try to find their way through. They don't know what they're looking for, but they know they can't stay here. It was a cute scene where she asked Parks to show her how to use the walkie, and he does. Kieran doesn't want to hand it over because he doesn't want her to lose it, but Parks says, don't worry, she'll give it back to him. They make their way through the town and discover a tall structure that has the fungus growing up to skyscraper heights and still connected to some Hungries. There are seeds that Caldwell explains can only be opened by fire or freezing. She says that if the seeds were to be opened, the fungus would become airborne and then total destruction. No living person would be safe anywhere. She picks one up and takes it with her. At this time, they come up to a mobile shelter that was designed to be self-sufficient. It's solar powered and doesn't need more than the sun to operate. There was clearly a team living in it at one point, but with all of the supplies used up, they must have had to leave and never made it back. There is a radio where they're able to call Beacon, but find it had also been overrun, so there's really nowhere to go. Kieran offers to go on a supply run and ends up getting booby-trapped by a group of wild, infected children. Melanie also needs to feed and finds the children hiding and planning. These kids don't communicate through words but with grunts and motions. She understands them and heads back to the pod to warn the others that Kieran needs help. They head out and find that the kids have found Kieran first, and they've also walked into their trap because the kids have now surrounded them and intend to eat them. Melanie instructs Parks and Justino to not make eye contact and to let her handle it. She then starts to growl at the kids and calls out their leader with grunts. I can't help but say here, I made my mom watch this with me, and even though I just watched it the night before, together we busted out laughing because this was truly hilarious. This tiny little girl turned apex predator. She knocks down the leader, uses Parks' cuffs to keep him from getting back up, and then went ham on his head with his own bat. Then lets them all know that the humans are hers, and that if they try to do anything about it, well, just don't. Just don't. She tells the pair to pretend to be afraid of her, and Parks is like, pretend? This scene was so good because you can see her evolving in real time. It's not like she's ever seen this wildlife kind of interaction, but she knows how to play the game. It is fascinating. When they get back to the pod, Caldwell has put on a gas mask and has released the gas in the small lab to knock out the trio. She then drags Melanie to the lab table and turns her back to clean her wound. She notices that Melanie is not in fact passed out, but standing right behind her. She tells Caldwell that she doesn't need to take as many breaths as everyone else. She used to practice holding her breath and counting to 1,000. Caldwell admits that the fungus allows her to do this, and Melanie repeats the line from earlier, subject's responses, exquisite mimicry of observed behaviors, ? Melanie asks her if she still believes this to be true, and she says she doesn't, but she's obviously lying to get her way. Here Caldwell is clearly struggling. When the Hungries invaded the base and she cut her hand, she wasn't able to treat it, and the infection is now killing her. Melanie tells her that she can smell that she's sick, and Caldwell admits she's dying. Caldwell has another go at trying to convince Melanie to sacrifice herself for the greater good. She only needs her spine and her brain. Melanie starts to consider this. Things are getting dire, and she knows her friends, most importantly Miss Justino, can only be protected by her for so long. She is fully aware of what actual value she has in the group. She's in real time rationalizing her perceived value from Dr. Caldwell. Caldwell is definitely trying to manipulate her, and this clever girl asks, we're human, right? And Caldwell reluctantly admits that she is in fact human. Melanie begins to remove her shoes and willingly sacrifice herself, and then asks, but what about the children? Caldwell, of course, doesn't give two shits about the kids and urges her to hurry up because they're running out of time.
But wait! There's more!
Melanie, in all seriousness, looks the doctor dead in the eye and asks, why should we die for you? Mic drop moment if I ever saw one. Now this moment sticks out for me because this has been sprinkled throughout. It solidifies the fact that this film has distinguished itself from the normal horror zombie genre. These infected are trying to thrive and survive. Melanie and the children are the second generation of a human fungal mix. there's something new altogether. Earlier, when they were all about to head to the mall, Parks asked why they're in these groups. Why are they all just milling about together like this? Caldwell said she didn't know why, but Melanie responds with, maybe they were lonely. It reminds me of David Tennant's Doctor Who when he and Rose end up at the London Olympics in 2012 to find that there are missing children. In their investigation, they are able to pinpoint where all the children are and why they're missing. Turns out that a micro-alien has separated from their family of millions on Earth and inhabited a little girl named Chloe. The alien made it so that when Chloe draws the pics of the neighborhood kids, they end up in her pictures. Because the alien was lonely, it was trying to create a family of its own. Banger of an episode if you haven't seen it. Anyway, Dr. Caldwell is devastated. Melanie runs out of the pod, closes the airlock behind her, and heads to the big fungal spire in the middle of the town. She then sets it on fire, releasing the spores into the atmosphere. Caldwell heads out behind her and runs into the feral kids from earlier. They, of course, chow down, and no more Dr. Caldwell. Melanie heads back towards the pod and finds Parks outside, struggling to breathe. She asks him why he didn't stay inside, and he says he came looking for her. It was a sad and beautiful moment as Parks has come full circle. He became who he is because of all that he's seen with the world ending. Melanie is upset but knows she cannot do anything to fix this for him, and even though she stands by her decision to infect everyone, she still wanted to keep her friends safe from the pod. Parks tells her that the last time he saw his little girl, she was 7 months old and that he'd hoped she was able to survive the pandemic. He then hands his gun to Melanie and asks her to end it for him. She spends his final moments with him until he starts to turn and fulfills her promise to him. Miss Justino finally wakes up to find that everyone is gone and she is alone in the pod. She is greeted by Melanie taping pics of a kitten in the forest for her on the glass, and she knows exactly what this means. We fast forward to Miss Justino waking up on another day ready to start class. Melanie has rounded up the remaining children from the earlier facility as well as the feral kids from the neighborhood. It seems that Melanie also retrieved teaching materials that Miss Justino now uses to teach all of the kids. The end. We've unpacked a lot here. Getting the perspective from Melanie allows you to be on her side. This is a horrific situation for all involved, but Melanie knows she will be okay because the only threat to her or the other children at this point are the humans. She manages to have incredible empathy for the living, but if they're going to just kill her off, then they are the threat. Miss Justino was the only one to show any of the children compassion, and Melanie was going to make sure that she would still be around. You could see that as she continued to try her best to save them over and over. Whenever they made mistakes to jeopardize their own lives, there was nothing she could do. The only one still treating her like a thing, an animal, was Caldwell. But as Melanie pointed out to her earlier, it's all gone. There is no science left to do. Caldwell ended up not getting infected, but still was dying of another type of infection. Now, why is this film called The Girl with All the Gifts? Well, they tell us this when Miss Justino tells the story of Pandora's box to the class. In Greek mythology, Zeus created the first human. He did this in order to punish Prometheus for stealing fire from heaven and bringing it to Earth. He sent Pandora to Earth to present her to Prometheus's brother, Epimetheus. Zeus gave Pandora 2 gifts. One was boundless curiosity and the other a locked box or jar, depending on how it's translated. Zeus tells her that the box is not to be opened for any reason at all. He got the help of the other gods that also gave her gifts. They gifted her name, gave her a myriad of skills and the capacity for great empathy. Because of her curiosity, she wanted to know what was in the box. She finally decides to open it and all the world's evils were unleashed. Pestilence, war, death, and Pandora freaked out. There was one thing left in the box that took its sweet time to enter the world, and that was hope. I saw a lot of hate on this ending, which I can't really understand. This film does have a happy ending, but it may not have been where you wanted to see it go. Living, breathing humans do not win this battle, but humanity does. They were always going to end up here. Melanie wasn't vengeful, but she also didn't want to die for people who wanted to kill off the rest of her kind instead of trying to figure out a way to live with them. I mean, she managed to be able to do it, and she did it without any fear. The saddest part for me is that Miss Justino is the last of her kind. Even though she has plenty of children around her, she's experiencing the loneliness that the children have had throughout this whole mess. But she isn't completely innocent here either. When they were hiding out in the hospital, she admits to Parks that the only reason she was saved was because she didn't get out of the way in time. She can still be forgiven though, because she made a choice and was faithful to that choice. She was going to protect Melanie from any and all danger, and this was huge for Melanie. So what do you think? If you didn't like the ending, why? Not only why, but what would you have wanted to happen to change your mind? If you did like how the story turned out, let me know that too and why. I'd be interested to know. Thanks, nerds.